We're live.
Hello, hi there, welcome to London Buddhist Centre, welcome to our second evening of our retreat, of the Fire of Joy retreat. My name's Suri Gupta and I'm just welcoming you, waiting for our official start times to come and say hello in the chat. We have a really interesting evening before us. We have Maitreyabandhu speaking to us, telling us another story from the life of Milarepa, our inspiration for this retreat. In the shrine room, which we'll go to when we start, we have Hippolyte as well, who's our tech team tonight. So thank you, Hippolyte, for all you're doing. Thank you, Maitreyabandhu, in advance, and thank you for joining us. It's great to start off with so many of you here. So let's see. Yeah, do check in with the chat. Tell us where you're calling from. Tell us how, if you're on the retreat, tell us how you're doing. Tell us how your day's been. This is day 2, and it's been another very full, rich day. So tell us how you're doing. It'd be good to hear. And Hippolyte will be able to let me know what's happening there in the chat.
Yeah, so we've got 100 people with us already, 100 early joiners, and they're a bit from everywhere. We have Paul Burnett in Brighton. Bodinage is listening to us from Sheffield with Robert and Grace, who are his children.
Oh, lovely. Love the whole family.
Grace is tiny.
Yeah, it's great. Really lovely to have you all with us.
We've got Gurdipe in Port Talbot and Maitreyabandhu in Dublin. We have Nina Allen in New York City, as usual.
As usual, Nina, hello.
Yes.
Again, and also to those of you in Port Talbot, Dublin, fantastic. Welcome.
It's now pouring. I'm almost struggling to keep track. The Brixton Buddhist Center is with us, Predrag in Belgrade. We've got Colin Boardman from the LBC, Jack Cooper also from Brixton, Anne Shawley in Woodford Green, quite a few people in Ireland. I'll just quote a few. Colette McKenna in Cork, Ireland.
We're learning all the different those of us who don't know Ireland very well, we're learning a various region. That's great. And obviously we always learn from different parts of the UK too. So welcome Brixton as well. And Woodford Green. I heard Woodford Green, which is not far from me.
Oh, and we've got a bit of continental Europe as well. Alex in Toulouse in France, and Natasha in Spain, in Catalonia.
Lovely. So France and Spain, Toulouse. It's the south, isn't it? Toulouse, I think. And Catalonia, fantastic. Welcome. And how are you doing? If you've been on the retreat, let us know how your day's been. What's been one of the highlights? If you've had a highlight today, anything that's interesting that you're still reflecting on, that's just something that you want to share with us as well. That's I've really personally enjoyed tuning into the chat in the Slack. So we have on this retreat the Slack lounge. It's like you'd have a lounge at a retreat where people hang out and share things. It's been really great seeing so many of your pictures and questions and things like that there. So do share here as well how you're doing on day 2 of the retreat. And if you're tuning in because you normally tune into this channel as well, welcome to you too.
So we've got 220 people with us now, and it's
great.
7:02, so we're ready to kick off.
Fantastic. Anyone sharing how you're getting on day 2?
Yeah, we are having. I saw a few there. Michael Callaghan is saying, "I'm loving the retreat and all the fantastic and varied input." Jack Cooper is also really enjoying the retreat. It's all very, very positive.
Great. Yeah.
And
Fantastic.
Adrian was saying, really appreciating Maitreyabandhu's teaching on the Maitreyabandhu, very helpful.
Yeah. We're doing Maitreyabandhu is teaching the Maitreyabandhu each day, which is a practice of loving kindness. And it's actually really important to have that kind of teaching when you're dealing with challenging situations, and our Our stories this week they're really, some of the, it's fun, they're inspiring, but they're definitely challenging too. And I think tonight's will be no exception. So when you're dealing in challenging situations, when you're looking at some teachings that are quite strong, really important to have a basis of positive emotion, loving kindness. So it's great that Maitreyabandhu is doing that every day this week. So do tune in. If you haven't yet managed to do that, do tune into that session that's happening. 8 o'clock, isn't it, Maitreyabandhu?
That's right, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I think
we'll start any moment when Hippolyte gives me the.
I think, we're good to go.
We're good to go. Fantastic. Thank you, Hippolyte. So welcome everybody. My name is Surya Gupta. It's great to have you with us live. And if you're listening to the recording as well, welcome to you. I'm speaking from home, but we're also at the London Buddhist Centre too, because Maitreyabandhu is our speaker this evening. So I'm going to introduce him shortly. And also Hippolyte, as you already heard, he's our tech team tonight, and he's at London Buddhist Centre as well. So we'll be zooming into them, live streaming from the centre. But yes, welcome to our day 2 of the Fire of Joy retreat. And last night, you joined us last night, if you watched the recording, we launched the stories element, the story of Milarepa. I shared the story about his life. Up until from his birth, really, up until his enlightenment, up until he became liberated, he became free. And Maitreyabandhu will be, I think this evening, talking about an episode, sharing an episode of his life after his enlightenment, I believe. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we'll also have time for meditation. We'll also have time, there'll be a break. We'll also have a ritual as well to end the evening. So another rich evening before us. So yes, welcome. Thanks for joining. And I'm going to hand over to Maitreyabandhu. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you tonight, Maitreyabandhu.
thanks very, very much, Surya Gupta. Really lovely to see you. It seems strange, isn't it, that we're talking to each other through screens like this, but really lovely to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So what I want to do is, last night, Surya Gupta, she went through the whole story of Milarepa's life. So it's as if she's looked at the whole picture. And I just want to focus in on one episode. And actually, this takes place before he was enlightened. That's probably quite important to say, perhaps. But I just want to sort of plunge into the middle of a story. Tomorrow night, Subhadramati and Gauravati are going to complete this story. But I want to plunge into the middle of the story because I wanted to look at demons tonight. So tonight is a night of demon spotting. Yeah, a demon night, the night of the demons, we should have called it. Okay. So I'm going to just start with reading a very short section. And what I'm going to do is take us through this little bit of the story. And I'll talk for a bit now. Then I'll hand back to Surya Gupta, who will lead us in a meditation. We'll have a meditation tea break, and then I'll talk a bit more about this story. It's such a deep part of the story, even quite short. I really wanted to go into it more deeply. So here's just a small section, right in the middle of a story. Exalted, Milarepa adjusted his robe and carried a handful of wood back into his cave. Inside, he was startled to find 5 Indian demons with eyes as large as saucers. One was sitting on his bed and preaching. 2 were listening to his sermon. Another was preparing and offering food. And the last was studying Milarepa's books. Yeah, a wonderful kind of moment in this story. Exalted, Milarepa adjusted his robe and carried a handful of wood back into his cave. So this is Milarepa practicing Buddhism, as we come to call it, practicing the Dharma, as it's traditionally called, very, very intensively in a cave above the snow line. Tomorrow, Subhadra is going to contextualize this part of the story, because as you can see, I've plunged into the middle. He comes into the cave, and he's startled to find 5 Indian demons with eyes as large as saucers. One was sitting on his bed and preaching, 2 were listening to the sermon, another was preparing and offering food, and the last was studying Milarepa's books. So that's where the story starts tonight, with these demons. So there he is, Milarepa. He's an example of dedicated Buddhist practice. And I'm never keen on this word Buddhist, really, because it sounds like another ist, like Marxist or fascist or whatever, like it's an ideology, like it's an ist. That word is foreign to Buddhism, really. He would be thinking of himself as questing for the truth, trying to find the truth of things, trying to see how things really are. That's how he would be thinking about it. He'd be trying to become enlightened. He'd be devoted, utterly devoted to that. So in the midst of that practice of devotedly striving and questing for enlightenment, he goes back into his cave, and he's startled to find 5 demons in his cave. Yeah. So the first thing to say about that, and what I want to do, there are 3 or 4 episodes with these demons. You'll be following these demons all the way through the evening in one form or another. The story keeps unfolding, but I want to pause with each demonic episode and see if I can open up some of the themes of the episode. So the first thing I wanted to say about this first, here we have a great person practicing Buddhism, trying to become enlightened, trying to see the nature of things, feeling actually really rather exalted at the moment, feeling rather he's doing well, he's accomplishing something. He goes back into his cave and he sees demons. Yeah. So the first thing to say about this is, if you commit yourself to something, you will be confronted by yourself. Yeah. If you commit yourself to something, you will be confronted by yourself. So if you really commit, you'll be confronted by your mind. You could be confronted by all the obstacles to your commitment. So for instance, if you're a painter and you decide to really commit yourself to that, a friend of mine knows Jake Auerbach, the painter Auerbach's son, and he was saying that his father paints every day apart from Christmas Day. Yeah? He just works in the studio. So he's completely committed himself to that. And then you hit all the obstacles of that commitment. You want to commit yourself to that, and what you hit is the obstacles to that commitment. As soon as you commit yourself, you meet life in a more vivid, in a way more demonic, in the painful and in the positive sense. You meet life more vividly. Now, this is true if you commit yourself to being a parent, for instance. If you're going to be a parent, if you're going to raise children, you've no idea what they're going to be like. You've no idea what challenges are ahead. And there will be challenges, and you know that, but you commit yourself to it. You can't decide, I don't know, year 2, actually, I don't fancy it anymore. Yeah. As soon as you commit yourself, all kinds of opportunities arise. That's true, but all kinds of challenges arise. All those things that challenge your commitment. Even in a tiny way, you might commit to get up for tomorrow morning on this retreat at 7 a.m. to finally join Subhadra in the shrine room, and you decide to commit to that. Guess what? Next morning, you'll be confronted by the obstacles to that commitment. You'll be confronted by the warmth of your duvet. I'm speaking with Jan of Archer in mind. So that's a general principle. As soon as you commit yourself to something, all kinds of opportunities arise, but also you become much more aware, much more vividly aware of all the challenges that are challenging your commitment. And they come from the inside of you, and they come from the outside of you. Both the opportunities and the challenges come from inside and outside of us. So demons, one of the reasons why they're demons is that demons are shapeshifters. They are material and immaterial. So in other words, how I understand that, and I've always understood that, I think, is that demons live outside and inside. So you can't kill demons. Sometimes people talk about subduing demons in Buddhism, but that's not really accurate. You can't subdue them. You can't kill them, because that's like killing off you as well as killing off, as it were, them. What we'll see in this story is, how do you interact with demons? And those demons are inside of you, and those demons are outside of you. And I'm wanting to try and move between inner demons and outer demons. So if that principle of commitment holds true for committing yourself to being a painter, committing yourself to being a mother, committing yourself to, I don't know, climb a mountain, do a marathon, lose weight. As soon as you commit yourself to something, opportunities arise and challenges arise, don't they? You suddenly notice all those parts of yourself that don't want to commit, that find it uncomfortable. Now, I think that's particularly true of Dharma practice, of Buddhist practice. As soon as you commit yourself to the Dharma life, and commitment in the Triratna Buddhist order and movement is symbolized by our ordination. What ordination is, what Suragupta and I have done, is commit ourselves, dedicate ourselves, devote ourselves to serving the Dharma. Yeah? As soon as you do that, as soon as you say, I want to give my life to this, it's that important. Suddenly all the obstacles to that arise, both internally and externally. There's almost a magical element of it. Life opens up, but also challenges come towards you. So as soon as you start meditating, for instance, as soon as you commit yourself, so I'm talking there about commitment to ordination, which is a very serious commitment indeed. In fact, it's the most serious commitment I've ever made. Recently, on one of these online evenings, somebody in the chat box said, what would you advise to somebody thinking of asking for ordination? And I said, hesitate. Yeah, hesitate. Because it's a very, very serious commitment, and you need to be ready to meet the challenges and the opportunities of that. But even on a smaller level, if you commit to meditation every day, which is what you really need, what I really need, if you commit to practicing mindfulness, if you commit just to being generous, to being friendly, to being a force of good in the world, what you'll be confronted by is your mind. Yeah. In fact, every time you meditate, you'll be confronted with your mind. I don't know whether surely you found this by now. Even when you're trying to watch your breath and count your breath after each out breath, you suddenly find my mind just is all over the place. A while ago, I taught a CEO of a big company. He came to the Buddhist Center to learn meditation. And he was a very, very capable man, as you can imagine, and a very, very, very adept at his work. He was a financial CEO, so he knew money very well. He worked with huge budgets. And I said, okay, here we go. So we're going to just start. I want you to watch your breath and count up to 10 after each out breath. When you get to 10, start again at 1. This is someone who's spent his whole life with figures. And the first thing he said to me is after that meditation is, yeah, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't get to 10. I couldn't get to 10. He was really shocked and startled by just how unruly his mind was. This is a man who'd really learned how to apply himself, really learned how to buckle down and do stuff that he wanted to do. He'd done well in his career. He couldn't get to 10. He was really shocked by that. So do you see that if you choose to meditate, what you're choosing to do is to be confronted by your mind. You'll see yourself. That's what meditation is. It's not some sort of, special, spiritual, wafty, incensey, patchouli, sandal sort of thing. It's saying to yourself, I want to see myself. I want to see myself really clearly, warts and all. I really want to see myself. I want to see the truth. Buddhist meditation is always about that. I want to see the truth. I don't know what the truth is, and I really want to see it because I feel a kind of a yearning for it. I feel a missing of it. I feel in myself a kind of absence of meaning and truth and value. And I sort of feel it must be there somewhere. So I'm going to meditate to find the truth. So when you do that in a Buddhist meditation, what you're confronted by is all of those elements of yourself that don't want to find the truth. You're confronted by your mind. You're confronted by how easily distracted you are. You're confronted by how silly your mind is. I mean, it's not silly, it's too nice a word, you know. So much of our mind isn't recyclable. It's just errant nonsense, you know. But hopefully, and I say this kind of, hope I'm not overdoing it, but hopefully, because I think this is important, you'll also be confronted by very deep themes in your being, which are really quite uncongenial. For instance, your hatred, your aversion, your dislike can be really shocking when you really face that. Gosh, that's in me. Yeah. So easy to think, oh, it's in those people over there. It's in these people over there. It's in this person on the news. This is how we can put things out of ourselves. But you start to realize, actually, it's in me. It's in me. I remember once with I've told this story before, with my partner's daughter. She was only 3, Alex, and I was carrying her in quite a crowded room, and somebody sort of bumped into me, or nearly bumped into me. And I was startled by this wolfish feeling I felt. I almost bared my teeth at this person. You know, I was really struck by, I would hurt you to protect this child. And you know, Alex isn't my child; it's my partner's daughter, oldest daughter. But I was really struck in that moment by how much force there was behind that. Yeah, any mother or father will already know that. Yeah. So meditation confronts you with those elements of yourself that you don't really want to believe are you. In our croissant and coffee culture, we don't want to believe that we've got hatred and lust and fear and anxiety and revulsion and superstition and all those things, resentment. We don't want to believe we've got that. But all of those things are just saying, well, we're just human. Buddhism can sound quite tough in a way, and I think in some ways it sort of is, in some ways it's not, but in some ways it really is. I mean, I think Buddhism in some ways is the toughest thing you can take hold of. But what it's trying to do is just hold up a mirror to you and say, come on now, you know, it's all right, just look at yourself. Look at yourself. So that hatred, that aversion, that indignation you have, that righteous indignation you have even, that's your mind. That's your mind, yeah? So it's interesting that what you've got here is 5 demons, yeah? So it's interesting that just the number 5 demons. It's also interesting that they're Indian, not Tibetan. I might not be able to go on to that, but I hope I might be able to. Because there's something, what that's a metaphor for is the so-called exotic. From the Tibetan point of view, India is exotic. So it's sort of saying that they feel alien. It's a metaphor for alienness. It's a metaphor, of course, it's nothing more than that, but metaphors are very important. So it's saying that you'll come into contact with something that you think is separate from you, is different from you, is alien from you. And they're so separate, different, and alien that in this vision that Milarepa has, he actually sees them as literally outside of him in demonic form. Yeah? And there's 5 of them. And traditionally, they're often compared to the 5 hindrances, as they're called, that you experience in meditation and in life itself. Perhaps better to call them, well, the Pali word is the 5 nivaranas. And nivarana, a beautiful word, means covering, which I think is much better than hindrance, because with the word hindrance, you can think a hindrance is something you need to blast out the way, or you can get round. Whereas nivaranas, the 5 nivaranas, means that your mind is covered over with these 5 nivaranas, these 5 coverings. I think of them as like cling film, or if you're listening in from New Zealand, that's called glad wrap. I think they're what it's called in other countries. Those are the only 2 countries I know. But it's like sort of 5 layers of cling film that we get caught up in, but they're that thin. It's just that we get hopelessly, you know how cling film sticks to everything. You know, if you don't tear it properly, it sticks to itself. So the 5 coverings are like that. They're like cling film. And we're trying to get through that somehow into the ocean of our mind, the purity and beauty and richness and depth of our mind. So those 5 hindrances are firstly craving, hankering, wanting, anything on that scale, from mild hankering to burning lust. Yeah, you know how lust, I remember it when I was young, it can be very, very strong indeed. Very, very strong indeed, and you know, terribly kind of, it can just not fit your self-image. You know, I didn't fit my self-image when I was young, and then the opposite to that. Then the other second hindrance is ill will, and again, this is all the way anything from mild aversion and irritability to things like resentment, spite, righteous indignation, hatred. All of those great forces in our life, huge tectonic forces, chthonic forces in our life. And then you've got the hindrance of anxiety and restlessness. So anxiety, mental anxiety and physical restlessness. So much of our life is worry and flurry. So many of the questions that you've been asking in the Slack lounge and in our evenings have been to do with anxiety and fear and worry and flurry. Yeah? So that's another demon. Yeah, it's another demon. And then the opposite demon to that is what's called sloth and torpor, mental sloth and physical torpidity. No, it's the other way around, isn't it? Mental torpidity and physical sloth. So tiredness, heaviness, but also, you know, for me at least, in my life, particularly as a young man, depression, low mood. People don't understand depression very easily, but people say, "What have you got to be depressed?" I remember my family saying, "Well, what have you got to be depressed about?" You know, and they were right in many ways. But depression is this horrible kind of lowness and absence of feeling, and really awful. I've struggled with depression in my life. So yes, sloth and torpor, and then the 5th demon, the 5th nivarana, is doubt. Doubt in yourself as a quester after truth. Never mind even, you know, Dharma practitioner, which sounds a bit smart, a bit clever clogs, but as a quester after truth, doubt that you are a quester after truth. Or doubt in the practices that you're taking up, doubt in whether reality contains some real meaning. And I want to come back to that later. Doubt in whether reality contains some real meaning. So those are the 5 nivaranas, the 5 hindrances. And in this case, they appear as 5 demons. I think that's probably a stronger and more accurate picture of them, because they're like possessions, aren't they? You can be possessed by hatred and indignation and righteousness. You can be possessed by jealousy and wanting and hankering. You know, that when you get jealous, it can possess you and torment you, just like a demon. You can feel trapped by anxiety. You can feel that you can't escape from depression and low mood. You can feel hampered by doubt and the inability to make decisions. I've got friends who really struggle with just making decisions. Very, very difficult when you just can't commit yourself to anything. So they're like demons. They possess us. A while ago, I'm ashamed to say, I got into this really negative state of mind. It's funny because when you're out of it, you can't remember quite what it was about. But when you're in one, they're utterly believable, aren't they? When you know, when you get into that really, and perhaps I hope you haven't, but I'm afraid I sometimes do, even now. I got into this really negative state of mind. And it was like trying to crawl out of a muddy hole. You know, I kept on thinking, come on, Maitreyabandhu, what's going on? We need to, and I tried to work with it, but it was like crawling out of a muddy hole and then slipping back in. And what struck me at the time is it felt like I was in the grip of a myth. Not just a hindrance, but a mythic power, a chthonic power, a demonic power that was kind of taking me over almost. And I had to sort of, it was only, I talked to David, I don't know whether you'd be listening, but David in my community about it. And I'd be, you know, when you're in a negative state, what you tend to do is want to you isolate yourself, don't you, from other people? I'm sure I'm talking for many of you as well. When you get in a negative state of mind, however you do it, and we all do it in different ways, whatever, because we've all got different demonic patternings, I think. You tend to isolate yourself from others. It feels shameful. You don't want to admit it. Sometimes you don't even want to admit it to yourself. But I remember talking to David about it. He was just so, I don't know, he just listened to me. And so he was just very, very, very kind and straightforward and it didn't worry him, but he didn't sort of there me. He didn't try to pat me out of it, but he didn't indulge me either. He was very, very good. Sometimes, very often, we need our friends to say, look, you're just in this state of mind just now. You need to, you see what's happening just now. So if you're going to practice Buddhism in any seriousness, if you're going to commit yourself to a quest for truth in any seriousness, you can expect to meet those demonic forces in yourself. If you don't do that, you'll tend to say they're out there. Yeah, you'll tend to say they're out there, that they exist out there, that the demon is really your mother or your boss at work or a particular, I don't know, group of society, men or women or white men or black men or whatever. You'll find some grouping in society to feel that they're the threat. Yeah? Human beings do this all the time. So if the 5 hindrances, the 5 nirvanas, these 5 demons are something that we confront if we're trying to go for a quest for truth, we're also trying to confront them in the world because we're trying to change that in ourselves. We're trying to be, we're not trying to sort of, I don't know, tell ourselves off for those stuff. They're just a description from a Buddhist point of view. And Buddhism is very, it's very, I don't know, it's just trying to say, here we go. This is what you look like. It holds up a mirror. This is what your mind looks like. Look at your mind. You can work with that. You can change that mind. But you need to look at it, and you need to look at it and be honest about it. Don't make a big fuss about it. Don't worry about it. Don't feel bad about your hatred or your lust or your anxiety, or don't feel ashamed of your low moods. Don't worry about your doubt. But yeah, look at it. Take a good look at it. It's lovely in the myth of Padmasambhava, who's another Tibetan figure that's very, in my mind, his voice is very like Milarepa's. He carries a purba, which actually sometimes looks like an ice cream cone, but it looks like a dagger if you look at it more carefully. But what it is, it's a tent peg. It looks like a dagger and looks like he's going to kill demons with it. But what he does, it's a tent peg, and he pins the demon down so he can look at it. Brilliant metaphor, isn't it? So tents, when you try and get them up in a wind, they're flapping about all over the place, and you need something to pin it down so you can start to master it, so you can start to bring in that energy, so you can start to look at it. Yeah. So first of all, you're looking at it in yourself. Then you're going to be, so that's changing the demons in you, working to transform them so that they become in you energy, love, awareness, clarity, courage, and so on. But you'll start to notice the demons in the world, because demons, they kind of blow between us all. They're not really in us. They're like ghosts. They blow between people. They can infect whole societies. They can demonize whole societies. Recently, I interviewed a wonderful American poet, Dan Burt, and just reading his life story. He comes from like terribly poor Philadelphia, crushingly poor, violent. He won't mind me telling you this because it's in his memoir, but his mother was a mafia queen. His uncle was a hitman. But talking to him, what I was struck by again is the demon of anti-Semitism. Just how much an idea in European culture, particularly, spread throughout Europe and became this demon that took possession of otherwise fully intelligent, highly cultured people, you famous stories about Nazis playing Bach and so on, that a demon can possess the whole culture. So demonic forces, as it were, can sort of take shape, can sort of grasp a whole culture, and there'll be one of those demons. There'll be one of those five. There'll either be some kind of hatred. Many of you and I have been struck by the racial hatred, the shocking matter of that, that an otherwise so-called civilized person can actually feel hatred or even disgust because of someone's color of their skin. It's really terrifying. I mean, I've experienced some degree of sort of what you'd have to call homophobia. Not very much. I've been very fortunate in that way. But I remember somebody looking at me with implacable hatred and making a very rude sign. I won't imitate it, because I'd been sitting next to my partner on a train. But what struck me was the incredible hatred in his eyes. And I felt this really strange sense of, what's that got to do with me? He doesn't know me. It's disorientating and weirdly shameful. I found myself not wanting to tell people about it. Even my partner, I didn't want to sort of talk about it, to be looked at with such hatred. And, this guy, I don't know who it was, but it was on a tube train, but, probably not a bad man. He's not an evil person. He's not a demon, but somehow he's in this grip of an idea, So there can be demons of hatred that can possess people, demons of anxiety. Sometimes you see whole cultures that become anxious. Well, I used to be a nurse. I used to be a nurse in Coventry. And in Coventry then we used to have these nursing bays, they'd have about 8 people in each bay. And each bay would start to have its own culture. So if you had one person who was very positive in a bay, the whole bay would become a really positive bay, and then nurses would go into it a lot. You'd find yourself going into that bay because people were lovely, you had a chat, you had a laugh, you really enjoyed it. The next bay, you'd have somebody who was angry and complaining, and before you know it, the whole bay did that. And then the nurses would start going into there so much, and they'd start gossiping about the people in that bay. So before you know it, the people who are being positive, they're getting lots of nursing care. The people who aren't were not getting such good nursing care, which would weirdly compound it. So do you see that these demonic forces, self and world, are constantly recompounding each other outside and inside? And then, you have exterior demons of apathy and sloth and complacency. You have exterior demons of doubtfulness. I want to come back to that in the second half. In fact, I've only touched on the very start of the story and gone on much too long about it, but I will speed up in the second half. I've got much more to say about these demons. You've got the demons of doubt, of not being convinced. I think one of the great matters for the world at the moment is a real doubt. Is there real meaning and value to life? Does life have a transcendent point? What's it for? There might be meaning in life, but what's the meaning of life? Since the death of God, for many, many people, that famous Nietzsche's statement about the death of God, that has been the great question. Has life got intrinsic meaning and value or not? Transcendent meaning and value or not? And that's, you could say, the demon of doubt. And that's gripping people and is invisible, but is shaping whole cultures. But I'll come back to that. And I'll come back to more about how Milarepa, remember, he's a committed quester after the truth. What does he do next? He's seen them. He's been startled by these 5 demons, the 5 nivaranas, the 5 demons that ghost our mind and ghost our world. And after the meditation, after the break, I'll start to say about what he does about them. But I'll hand back to Suragupta meanwhile.
So thank you very much, Maitreyabandhu. Some really fundamental points there. around the nature of commitment, and also the negative forces within ourselves, negative forces in the world. And I'm looking forward to hearing what Milarepa does with these negative forces that he encounters in the story as well, when we come back after the break. So now we're going to spend a bit of time meditating together, relaxing. We can get a bit of it's an opportunity for us to actually absorb some of what we've heard, see what's actually in our experience, relax, tune in as well. So we will do the practice, the mindfulness of breathing, a variation of that, and I'll guide us through that. So I invite you to close your eyes, get yourselves comfortable in a comfortable position. If you're sitting on a chair, then aim to sit upright, but with your feet ground on the floor, or if you're sitting cross-legged, your knees touching the floor supports. So you've got a stable base beneath you. You might also be lying down. Maybe you're standing. Wherever you are, see if you can begin to come into a relationship with our body right now. Tuning into our experience, connecting with how we are, relaxing. So I'll do a short body scan to begin with. And you can start with your feet on the floor, or touching the ground in some way, or whatever textures beneath your feet. And get a sense of your feet connected to the rest of your lower half of your body. Your shins and calves, knees, thighs, groin, buttocks. And really see if you can allow your lower half of your body to relax, to ease into your support. Relaxing into the ground. Knowing that the earth right now is supporting us, supporting our presence, supporting our being, supporting us in this, the opportunity of life that we have right now. So really allowing your lower half, your thighs to relax, letting go of any holding on that might be there. Allowing gravity to exert its influence, dropping into our experience. And then having a sense of your upper half of your body being upright, alert, open. So becoming aware of the lower half of your spine, your sitting bone, from your sitting bones, the lowest point of your spine, following your spine to your back, right up to the top of your back, and where the back meets the shoulders. And you may wish at this point to just breathing a little bit more deeply and experience the breath moving through the back and the shoulders. So breathing in, and you can feel the shoulders rising with your breath, and then allowing the breath out and letting the shoulders relax, letting the shoulders meet your back. drop down. So really have a sense of any tension being dissipated, being loosened from your shoulders. You can imagine it going down your arms, even the energy moving down your arms, through to your hands and fingers and out through your fingers. Become aware of our head. It's poised, our neck and shoulders. Head upright. And connecting with our face. Having a sense of our face as we're bringing awareness to our face. Having a sense that our face is softening. Our eyes are relaxing into their sockets. There's nothing for them to do right this moment in time. They can relax. Jaw, tongue, relaxing. Loosening, slackening. Your soft face. And then connecting in with your throat and your chest and your belly. Notice the movements that are happening. The rising and falling. The expansion. The inhalation and the exhalation. Drawing in and moving out. So our whole body here, seated, practicing, becoming aware, tuning into our experience, the experience of this moment, this precious moment. Just get a sense right now of how you are. You don't have to try and analyze it. Just get a sense of a general mood, general, what you can say is your inner landscape, a general sense of how you are. It might be broadly pleasant or broadly unpleasant or neutral in between. Maybe you're not sure, but just give us space to connect with how you are at this moment. You might be aware of something from your day, something that's arisen from conversations or the talk we've just heard. Whatever it is, just notice it, acknowledge it. No need to push it away. Just being aware of its presence. And we're going to now tune in to our breath. That moving, that coming and going of movements. physical movements that's affected by our breath. To just get a sense of the rhythm to begin with. And the points of your body where you feel the breath most keenly. It might be your chest, might be your belly. You're just noticing at this point. And as we're doing this, if your mind wanders off, again, we're noticing it. We're noticing that has occurred. Come back to your experience of your body. Yourself sitting, lying, standing. And then notice the breath, the sensations of breathing. This miraculous process that keeps us alive, helps keep us alive, rejuvenates us. And if we follow the breath with our awareness, with our attention, can bring greater awareness. So we're going to just do the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing, the first and third stage. And the first stage, we're following the breath coming in and going out. And at the end of the out breath, we're just quietly counting 1 to ourselves. And then in and out 2. And we continue to count until we get to 10, or, very importantly, until we notice that our mind has drifted off. And when we do that, that's a moment of awareness. And we choose to come back to our actual experience and start the counting of the breath, the sensations of breathing again from 1. If you notice your mind wandering off, great, you've become aware. And you bring your mind back to the experience of your body, your experience of the breath, coming in and going out. And then start the counting again, counting the sensations of the breath. Continually bringing the mind back. Every time we do that, the mind gets an opportunity to align with the body, to come into relationship with the body. And that helps us relax more and more deeply. And then we'll move into the third stage of the mindfulness of breathing. But we'll just let go of the counting now. And just continue to be aware of the sensations of breath equally. Breath coming in and flowing out. Like the waves or the tide of the ocean. Coming in and flowing out. Becoming absorbed and interested in the experience of breathing. Noticing what the mind is doing with this very simple activity. Encouraging the mind to keep coming back to the breath. If you notice any tension arising in your body, you become aware of discomfort. Just checking in with that. Can you imagine that area relaxing, easing, softening? Coming back to the breath. As we begin to draw the meditation to a close, we can tune in to all of us here, practicing together, wanting to grow, wanting to be aware. Just bring all of us to mind. Imaginatively connect in with all the many people from all the various different places in the world who are tuning in, being with each other right now. We can wish ourselves well. Wish ourselves individually well, and wish this community well. And then coming back to your body on the chair, on the bed, wherever you are, connecting with your breath, your environment, any sounds around you. And then gradually, when you're ready, open your eyes. And taking a deeper breath. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great practicing with you. And we're now going to go for a tea break. We'll have 10 minutes, which by my reckoning, we'll be back at 7 minutes past 8. So is that right? I think that's right. 7 minutes past 8. 10 minutes time anyway. So I'll see you then. Go get yourselves a cup of tea, stretch out, And when we come back, we'll be listening to the rest of this story, hearing more about what Milarepa does with all these demons in his cave, and how that relates to our experience, our everyday experience as well. And we'll also have a chance for questions. So if you do have questions, you can be putting them in the chat too. All right, so see you in 10 minutes time. Thank you. So we're back. So settle back in. Welcome back to part 2. And I'm going to hand over to Maitreyabandhu, who left us with some really important questions, reflections on the nature of commitment and also the nature of forces, negative forces. And we're going to, I believe, hear more about Milarepa's encounter with these demons. So Maitreyabandhu.
Thank you very much, Surigupta. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so let's continue. I better go a bit quicker than I did in the first half because otherwise we'll be here too long. Following his initial shock, Milarepa thought, these must be magical apparitions of local deities who dislike me. Although I have been living here a long time, I've never given them any offering or compliment. So he then sings a complimentary song to the deities of the Red Rock Jewel Valley. Yeah, I won't go through the song, but he thinks that they're local deities, that they're the spirits of the place. And he realizes that he'd been living there a long time, but he's never made offerings to them. He's never complimented them. Bhante Sangharakshita in the Yogi's Joy, which is, it's an ebook that you've got with this retreat. So do look up this story. He talks a lot about this question of being local deities. I want to take a slightly different tack than Bhante Sangharakshita, the founder, how he thinks about it. But what basically happens is Milarepa actually tries to appease them. Yeah? So he sings them a complimentary song. He tries to say, really sorry about that. I should have known that you were here. Be nice and actually go away. It finishes with something like, da, 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 and then leave his place, So he's actually trying to appease them. Yeah. Really what you've got here from Milarepa is a ploy. He's trying to bargain with them effectively. He's trying to say, sorry about that, I should have been nicer, should have done an offering, here's a nice complimentary song, now will you go? Yeah. Now, isn't that accurate for what we do with ourselves? We try and appease these forces. We try and bargain with them. So instead of working with our ill will or anxiety or something, we either distract ourselves from it, or we make excuses from it, or we try and appease those forces in one way or another. We hide from them. We try to tame them. Yeah. So we try to tame them interiorly. We try to, sort of not really get to grips with them in all kinds of strategies. And we try and appease those forces exteriorly. The demon I particularly wanted to talk about that we try to appease exteriorly, and I think that Buddhism can slip into this, particularly as it's practiced in the modern so-called developed world, is that we try and appease secular materialism. Yeah? So we're in a world, and secular materialism is another demon. This is me taking another tack on it now, that secular materialism, like any demon, is invisible, but very, very powerful, and takes possession of people. So that you really believe that there's nothing happened before you were born, nothing happened after you died, that any meaning in life is to be found by human endeavor, that there's no transcendental meaning, there's no any kind of existence after death. What most people have is a belief that you would call something like secular materialist, that involves all the things I've just said, disguised as a fact. Yeah, we think when you think of it, it's incredibly arrogant. Nobody knows what happens when you die. I don't know what happens, and you don't know what happens when we die. Philosophers don't know what happens. The Imam doesn't know what happens. The Buddhist teacher doesn't know what happens. The Archbishop of Canterbury doesn't know what happens. No one knows what happens when you die. And we like to think that's our situation, that I don't know. But we act as if we do know. that actually, oh yeah, actually I do know what happens when you die, and you're obliterated. And we take that to be a fact. You know? We take it unthinkingly to be a fact. So what we're in the grips of without realizing it is a material, secular, a sort of secular materialist belief system that actually hampers and constricts our life. It's actually far too small for us, that belief system. It doesn't take account of our dreams. It doesn't take account of our visions. It even doesn't take account of our falling in love, for heaven's sake. Do you remember the first time you fell in love? I mean, it's not a secular experience. You know, it doesn't take account of our depth. Yeah. But one of the things that Buddhism can do, particularly in the modern West, if it's not careful, is it tries to appease that demon. Instead of confronting it and saying, hang on, you don't know that, it easily wants to say, actually, let's just try and improve all this lived world, a material world with no intrinsic meaning, with no transcendence. Let's try and appease that with some breathing exercises, with some good stuff, with some meditation. If we're not careful, Buddhism becomes a perfect way of appeasing secular materialism. I don't want to be too strict on it because, you know, there's a lot to be said for secular materialism in some senses. You know, it's better than horrified superstition. It's better than believing in a terrifying, judgmental God. But it's very life-denying and cramping. It is a demon in its own right. And Buddhism, as it's practiced in the modern world, very easily wants to appease that demon. Yeah. I remember talking to someone who is a very, very good poet and who also thought of himself as a Buddhist. And he said to me, there's no one here but us chickens. I think it's from a song or something. There's no one here but us chickens. And when he said it, it sounded very, very sort of rigorous and truthful, and I'm facing up to the reality that there's no one here but us chickens. And but I paused, and what I should have said, what I didn't say, is, how do you know? How do you know? You know, how do you know reality? Do you know that there's no one here but us chickens? How do you know? When you think about it, it's terribly presumptuous. I mean, we use words like the mind, for instance, but we have no idea what the mind is. It's the great problem. You know, philosophers call it the great problem. People still don't understand how a lump of grey matter can create this incredible world that we live in and experience. We don't understand that, but we use this word trippingly, the mind, as if we know what we're talking about. It couldn't be more mysterious. We live amongst mysteries and magic. Our life is a magical thing. This picture of demons, it's not a sort of fantasy picture of a kind of, a regenerate society before, you know, we knew better. It's an accurate picture of what our life is like. It's haunted by demons, and those demons are invisible often. You know, only 100 years or so ago, to say that you didn't believe in God would be thought as a kind of madness. People would just think, well, you're just mad. It's just self-evidently the case that God created the world. Very few people I know believe that anymore. But it wasn't that long ago that everybody believed that and took it to be a fact. We've now gone to this belief in secular materialism. We take it to be a fact. It's a belief, just like a Victorian belief in a benevolent creator God. Yeah. So if we're not careful, we try to appease that. Instead of confronting it with more rigorous thinking, with more challenging perception, what Milarepa does at first here is he tries to appease the demons. But also, do you see how we do that in ourselves? We try to make bargains with ourselves, and it doesn't work. We try to make bargains with the demon. I'll relax once I get on holiday. If X didn't do Y, I wouldn't get angry. My anger's not mine. It's because X does that. If he didn't do that or she didn't do that, I wouldn't do this. It's caused from outside me. We try to appease forces within ourselves and outside ourselves. And it doesn't work. Yeah? It doesn't work. As soon as you try and bargain with your experience, and you can do that in meditation and Buddhism, can't you? Okay, I'll do this spiritual thing, I'll do this meditation thing, and then I want that anxiety to go away. Or I'll listen to you in that conversation, and then I'll hope you won't criticize me anymore. We try to bargain with life, and it doesn't work. You know? So we do that when we meditate. We can do that so easily. So bargaining with your experience, I'll do this, then I won't worry. I'll do this, and then difficulties will go away. Some people think of practicing Buddhism as if it's going to sort of make, like a magic chill pill, you know, that's going to sort of appease all of those forces and leave us in this lovely kind of you know, plunge pool of benignity, and then can be very distressed when it doesn't do that. Yeah. I think one of the dangers of Buddhist practice in the modern world is that we use it to appease these very strong forces within ourselves and kind of iron over them and prettify them and spiritualize them instead of actually facing them. And what's interesting in the story is Milarepa sings this complimentary song, a song that's an appeasement. Of course, what you realize when he does this, it's a ploy, and it's a ploy to get rid of them. And as soon as you try and do ploys to get rid of people, guess what happens? They pick up on it. And your mind is like that. As soon as you have a ploy to get rid of your aversion or to escape your anxiety or to wish away your low mood, those states of mind get stronger. Yeah. And what happens in the story is the demons get angry with him. They actually start to get malevolent now. One starts to grind his teeth, one starts to scowl and howl, and they start to move towards him. Yeah? So appeasement of demons doesn't work. Then what Milarepa does is he evokes a wrathful Buddha figure in his meditation. He sits to meditate, evokes this wrathful figure. Yeah? So in other words, he tries to outmuscle them, basically. He tries to flex his spiritual muscles. He tries to evoke this wrathful form. Yeah. And this is very interesting, isn't it, that he tries to do that. And that's what we do, don't we? When, you know, we get angry about being angry, we get anxiety, we get anxious about our anxiety, we worry about the fact that we worry. Very often, we interiorly, when we're working with those demons, and we're all working with them, human nature is a working with those demons. What we often do is, you know, to quote Iggy Pop, an unlikely quote, is we put out the fire with gasoline. We get angry about our aversion. We get anxious about our anxiety. We get depressive about our low moods. Etc., etc. We try to meet their force with force. We try to force them out, is another way of thinking about it, that we try to push those hindrances away, push away anxiety, push away hatred, push away lust and jealousy, push away down. But that doesn't work. It makes them stronger. It makes them stronger. So interiorly, as soon as you try and push away discomfort, you make it worse, nearly always. Yeah? As soon as you try and grab at pleasure, pleasure disappears. Yeah. So forcing your mind, try to force your way through these nivaranas, these hindrances, these demons, doesn't work. But then in the exterior world, do you see how so often, if we're not careful, and this is a delicate point, if we can try to meet hatred and then evoke our own hatred. We try to look, we can be very aware of, I don't know, the terrible destruction of the planet is one of the things that still, there's, you know, everything still to do. We can be so terribly aware of that and pained by that. But if we're not careful, we become the demon as well. We become this angry, wrathful demon, and it'll just make matters worse. You just become part of the problem. One of the great dangers of activism is that it activates your hatred. So you're trying to meet hatred with hatred. And the Buddha, right from the beginning, is absolutely uncompromising about the fact that that hatred is never overcome by hatred. That's like the first the first great saying of Buddhism, really, that hatred is never overcome by hatred. That's a difficult thing to hear, especially when you see such injustices around, a world on fire with hatred, with anxiety, with lust, with jealousies. But if you're not careful in trying to work with those things, you become those things. Actually, interestingly, that going back to that appeasement, one of the dangers of Buddhism is that it makes you complacent. It makes you sort of drop back into a kind of quietism and a way of appeasing everything, keeping the world a little bit at bay, so you can have your quiet, calm meditation. It can be, if it wrongly practiced, can be a way of turning off from the world, a kind of quietism. Yeah, but yes. If you're not careful, when you try to meet injustice and hatred, if you're not careful, you just evoke it in yourself. So you become the demon fighting a demon, and demons get stronger when you do that. Hatred is never overcome by hatred. And so what Milarepa now realizes that he is on the wrong tack. And I'll just finish with this in a moment, and we'll open for questions. So Milarepa, you can see he's not enlightened yet, because he's really battling with these 5 great demonic forces that haunt us and haunt the world. He tries to appease them in himself and in the world, perhaps, and that doesn't work. He tries to meet force with force, and that doesn't work, can never work. However tempting that is, it never works. History is strewn with that. So what he does is he sings a song of realization. It's really very beautiful. In the 100,000 song, he sings a song of realization. In other words, he remembers, how would I put it? He remembers, well, one clumsy way of putting it is his true nature. He remembers the Buddha. He remembers transcendent consciousness. He rises up to a new level of transcendental realization that is beyond, completely beyond any kind of demonic hindrance. Yeah? He rises up to that new level in realization. He doesn't stay at this level of secular materialism. He doesn't appease. He doesn't try to fight fire with fire. He rises up to a level of realization in which he sees through the demons. He sees through himself. He sees through the world. He no longer, in that state, believes in or even sees a really existent world and a really existent self. He sees something that for us is unimaginable, a new consciousness, a transcendental consciousness that's not the consciousness of God, but it's not like a Socratic consciousness. It's not just the consciousness of a very developed person. It's a transcendent consciousness, a consciousness that goes beyond egotism, that goes beyond language, that goes beyond space and time, that goes beyond any way of knowing. Yeah? He sings a song of that. It's beautiful, isn't it, that he sings a song of transcendental consciousness, because no word can ever describe it. Having sung that song, having risen to that new level, he then rushes towards the demons, who are terrified, swirl into a kind of fog and disappear. Because he's seen through them. He's risen to this new level of transcendent consciousness. He's not trying to appease them anymore. He's not frightened of them anymore. In fact, he sings that I'm not frightened of anything, including death. He's actually, in this song, he's saying, I was going to recite some of it, but we haven't got time, but he actually says to the demons, stay with it as long as you like. You're welcome here. So if we want to chunk that right the way down before we finish to our meditation tomorrow morning, what that's saying is he welcomes his experience. Whatever his experience is, he's saying, you can stay here as long as you like. I'm not going to bargain with you. I'm not going to try to appease you. I'm not going to force you out. I'm going to welcome everything. I'm going to welcome my discomfort. I'm going to welcome my difficult emotions. I'm going to welcome my joy. I'm going to welcome everything in. Everything can stay. Yeah? And he can do that because he's risen to this new level of consciousness in which The demons just can't appear. They have no power in that world. They have he sees through them. They disappear, and he says, you can stay as long as you like. You don't frighten me in the slightest. Over to you, Sir Gupta.
Thank you very much, Maitreyabandhu. A very thought-provoking talk, a very vivid talk. I've certainly got in my mind these ideas of these, or the images of these demons, but also what they really evoke for Milarepa and what they evoke for us now. You know, working with all these strategies. You've been talking about these strategies we employ to deal with the negative forces within ourselves, and also how that sort of then potentially plays out in the world as well. So thank you very much for really throwing lots of things in there for us to sit with, reflect and digest. And as we're on retreat and we're meditating, we will be directly dealing with the hindrances, the things that the barriers to our own potential. Will be directly dealing with that. So it's very sort of timely talk as well, I think. So thank you. So now we have an opportunity for questions. So please do write your questions in the chat box. Let us know what you'd like us to kind of go into a bit more. We'll hear, of course, more from Maitreyabandhu as well, to any specific points that either need clarifying or that you're left pondering. So let's do that now. Hippolyte, I'm wondering whether there's any questions already there.
Yes, we have a couple of questions that have come in already. So Marcia is asking, what do I do when I can't recognize my demons, or if they hide once again in the darker corners of my mind?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. What do we do if we can't recognize our demons? We can't recognize, or they're elusive in some ways to us. That's a really interesting thing. I think one of the things that helps us recognize our negativity, our demons, is coming into relationship with other people. Because I often will have this on retreat. You know, I might have this wonderful retreat, in-person retreat. I come back to my life where I'm intermingling with people who don't necessarily share my values, who haven't been practicing, meditating, who haven't been reflecting on love and compassion and awareness. I come into relationship with people, a whole array of people, and very soon somebody will do something that will make me, will create an effect, or will cause some kind of reaction in me. That is right there. That is right there, because I can have an idea of myself as being, you know, this wonderfully calm, peaceful person who really wants the best for myself and everybody, and that's true. And what's also true is that I'm not yet enlightened. So if I'm not yet enlightened, these negative forces are there, and coming into a relationship with other people will bring them out in one way or the other. I think what we need is that honesty to recognize them. And in a way, sometimes I think we feel it in our bodies before our minds kick in. Anytime you're sort of tensing up, anytime you're physically sort of pushing something away, we feel it. We feel that that's going on. And there is a reaction right there. So in our reactivity is where we can see the demons. And it's more about, I think, noticing our reactivity, noting our resistances to experience, to other people, to ourselves, that we'll begin to spot and identify demons. And meditation will help us do that, because meditation really helps us tune into our bodily experience, tune into what's going on, what's sort of lying beneath the surface, and helping us be honest and recognize our experience. So other people and meditation, I think and honesty will help us recognize them. I hope that helps. But Maitreyabandhu, what do you want to add to that?
No, I don't think I haven't got anything to add. I think you're dead right. Dead right.
All right, let's have another question then. I won't say as much next time.
You're welcome to.
Following on to what you just said, Sri Gupta, Lidis is asking, how do you deal with hindrances in meditation? How do you fight against the demons to the kasha.
Okay, so there's quite a lot written about the 5 hindrances, and it might be that we go into that in the meditation teaching, but I'm going to hand over to Maitreyabandhu now. And do you want to add anything more? Because you did mention that a little bit about the strategies that don't work, the hindrances. What about the ones that do, Maitreyabandhu?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. The issue with I do like this word nivaranas, because the problem, I'm very aware of metaphor, and you see how metaphor shapes our mind. So when you think something is a hindrance, you think, oh, I should be able to just get around it, or I should just be able to blast it out of the way. But if you think of there being a covering, that your mind is covered over with nivaranas. So the key thing about the hindrances is, first of all, not to take them personally. Yeah. It's weird because you experience them as very personal, particularly in meditation. Very often, it's not that you've got a hindrance, but a hindrance has got you. It's not that it's actually when you start to become aware, thinking, actually, I'm feeling aversion here, or I'm feeling anxiety here. That's really good, because already you're sort of stepping back a bit from that. The moment before, you were just anxiety, or you were aversion. Yeah. So that the first practice is to try not to take the hindrances personally. I like this idea of them being like demons, because I like the old idea of demons being daemons, which is a similar word to genius. It just means spirits, and they can be, originally could be benign or malevolent. Yeah. So they're like ghosts, and they sort of inhabit us. So if we could think of them as, oh, this is, gosh, look, I'm experiencing aversion. What does that feel like? Gosh, where's that? Where do I feel it? How do I feel it? Can I get a bit curious about that, rather than taking it very personally? So the first thing I think is try not to take it personally, and the second thing is to try not to get caught up in the perspective of the demon or the hindrance. You see what I mean? That any demonic hindrance, to use that sort of metaphor, and they are metaphors, has its own perspective. So you can get caught up in the perspective of anxiety or the perspective of ill will. You know what it's like sometimes when you're tired and you start feeling critical, but you're very tired, and you feel you know that actually you're just tired, but your critical mindedness sort of takes over you, and you get caught up in that perspective. So the practice is, first of all, noticing and naming the demons. That all traditions, as soon as you name a demon, this is me being anxious, isn't it? I'm just anxious now, or actually I'm just tired now. I can't think about this just now, or whatever. So the first thing is naming. The second thing is, let's not take it personally. I know it feels personal, but that'll make it more difficult if you take it personally. It's not easy not to take it personally, but just think of it as a sort of ghost that you could get interested in, and like Milarepa, eventually say, you can stay. You're welcome. I just want to find out who you are. I want to find out more about you. But then thirdly, try not to get caught up in the perspective of the hindrance. Yeah. That's a simple way of talking. There's so much to say about the hindrance.
Great. Thank you very much. So Hippolyte, another one.
Yes, I'd be saying that there's so much to be around us in terms of news and opinion, so much information. So can you say more about why then quietism can be dangerous?
I didn't quite hear. Maitreyabandhu, do you want to say that back to me? Or...
Yeah, so, with all the things that we're seeing in the news, why is quietism dangerous?
Why is quietism dangerous? So why is this kind of, when you say quietism, is it sort of like holding back, a sort of passivity, a sort of, well, I can't really do much about the world as it is, so I'm just going to sort of do what I can in my level, and basically make myself comfortable, in a sense. Yeah, I
think there's in modern Buddhism, at least, there can be this tendency for meditation and mindfulness to become part of a sort of self-pampering.
Right.
that you know, you're very aware, you get very sensitive to your own inner world, and you don't want things to impinge on that too much. So you start to not want to engage very much with the sufferings of the world around you. That's what I mean by quietism.
Right, that's what you mean by it, yeah. Because, I mean, to be honest, for me, you know, I came into Buddhism because I saw it as a way to help alleviate suffering in the world and in myself. So that's not a familiar sort of trait for me, I think. But I certainly recognize, I remember having the fear of it. That's what I remember, because I could remember coming in, getting involved and seeing, gosh, this is such a nice life in many ways. You're around people that are trying to grow, you're meditating, you're going on retreat. I could see the danger of losing touch with what I was really doing and why this path mattered. And for me, it is about alleviating suffering in myself so that I can also help alleviate suffering in the world. And actually, if you're not somehow focused on that, then you've missed Buddhism in a sense, because the first teaching that the Buddha gave was the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. He didn't say it was all suffering. He acknowledged there was joy and pleasure in life, but he said life is suffering. You know, even the very fact that we're not in control, that there's all these changes going on all of the time, and that one day we'll have to leave everything behind. That is suffering on that level, let alone all the other things that go on a day-to-day, you know, individual and global basis. So if you're not in touch with that, in a way, you're not fully in touch with your own suffering. You can't really connect to others. And in a way, you're sort of missed what Buddhism's trying to do. So for me, it's coming back to what the Buddha was taught. It's going back to the kind of pain, you know, that one can be in and the world is in, and really allowing that to motivate us to keep transforming ourselves. I think if you lose touch with that, you're losing touch with a really powerful source of motivation that will actually help us become free. The more we're aware of suffering, the more free we want to be. The more we put the energy in, the more we're aware of other suffering, the more we're willing to actually grow, develop, so that we can have an effect in the world, so we can make the world a better place. And actually, interesting enough, that will also have a transformative effect on us. So I think we're losing touch with the power of Buddhism if we, you know, go down that path.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I've been thinking more and more that, you know, Bhante Sangharakshita, the founder of our movement and order, he really emphasizes that you're trying to change the world and change yourself. One of the things I love about the metaphor of demons is that they're existing in the world and in the self. That any real human endeavor of value is always trying to do both, and one without the other won't work. So if you just try and change yourself, you fall into quietism. If you just try and change the world, you either get exhausted, fall into hatred and indignation and so on. The other thing I was thinking is that I felt very strongly about changing the world, and I still do. What I sometimes fear is I meet people who want to change the world and it never seems to include me. You know, when you meet people who want to change the world and they're quite willing to be unpleasant to you or even try and push past you to this abstraction called the world. So the world is the next person to you. It's the person that you sit next to. It's whether when you go into a shop, are you friendly or not? If you're friendly, you're changing the world a bit. And if you're unfriendly, you're being part of the problem of the world. To change the world, it needs to be consciousness by consciousness. When you think about it, consciousness is the most powerful thing in the world. Some of the most horrifying things of the world and some of the most wonderful and beautiful are all just to do with human consciousness. Whether it's works of art being the most beautiful works of art, or it's some of the horrors of the 20th century, they're to do with individuals' consciousness. So changing the world from a Buddhist point of view is changing it consciousness by consciousness. That's a massive project. But unless you change consciousness, lasting change won't happen. People need to be changing themselves and changing the world. I think without that, it isn't really Buddhism. It's something else. It's like meditationism or something like that, or mindfulnessism, or Unfortunately, in Buddhism, in the modern West, whatever the West is, or the modern world at least, seems to be very much easily falls into that, or people think it's going to be that. And I was struck by you, Suragupta, a fear of that. And it might be just that it's not like that, and that people have a fear of that, but I think it can be sometimes.
Yeah, I think in a way, the more inspiration one transforms, the more our sphere of influence can increase. So it is about the friendly person next door, or the person you see, but it's also about broadening our sphere of connection, our community, our networks, so that we are having a collective effect, and obviously an individual effect as well. Do we have time, Hippolyte, for just one more question, and we'll do it quite briefly?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure we have time, and we can stay on that topic. Isabel is wondering, how then do we engage with causes that we feel are important, like the fight against racism or fascism, without bringing our demons with us in that?
Great question. In a sense, it's not. I don't know if it's about without bringing our demons with us. We bring ourselves, don't we? We bring ourselves to whatever we're doing. And for me, it's very much around practicing with yourself, with others, and being really clear on what you're trying to move towards. So we're trying to, help alleviate suffering, and we're trying to do that moving towards love, moving towards awareness. It's awareness and love that will alleviate suffering. So in a sense, when those demons appear in our actions, we know that that's work we got to do. We got to practice around that, and actually us doing that also can give us a confidence to help others do that too, because it will show up, because it's us. Until we're fully enlightened, it's going to be there. So it's much more about learning the ways to work with it effectively, rather than hoping it's not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add there?
No, I'm not sure I have, but I think you're right. I think it is a real question. How do you deal with things without provoking that in yourself? I think I have seen that in people get, it's sort of provoking hatred in them and not being in their interests. I think the quest is to be the solution. That's a difficult quest. But all the people who have really helped the world have been part of the solution. They in themselves have embodied in their selves the kind of mental states that they're wanting to see around them. I think that's what you see in the Milarepa story. He becomes a solution. He doesn't fight the demons. He rises to a new level in which they can't frighten him anymore. I think that's very hard, but I think it's what we human beings are here to do, is to live the solution we want to see. And that means working with our demons. And that's a messy business, but it's a real human business, and it's a very noble, it's probably the most noble business.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the great questions. We have, if you're on the retreat, there's a Slack lounge, so you can keep commenting or put your questions in there as well. But thank you very much. Really rich questions. And thank you, Maitreyabandhu, for very sort of thought-provoking and rich talk this evening. So I'm going to talk about now just about coming to the end of our evening together. And it really was, interesting where we started this evening. We started about the nature of commitment, and how really you don't really discover who you are. You don't really discover your potential, Maitreyabandhu was saying, until we really commit ourselves, till we really give of ourselves and give. And we discover what we're capable of, and we also discover what's holding us back. And we need both of those things. We need to see both of those things. We need to see what what our capacity is, what our potential is, and we also need to understand what is it that gets in the way. So in a way, as Buddhists, what we're doing, this community we have, we're engaged in that project. We're engaged in this active commitment. All the London Buddhist Centre is committed to helping to alleviate suffering. It's helping to create that influence, that sphere of influence that keeps reaching out and out to show people really that it is possible to change. It is possible to transform. It is possible to alleviate those negative forces in ourselves and in the world. That's what this project of the London Buddhist Centre is. That's the project of all the centres that are with us today, that are joined in on this retreat: Brixton, Sheffield, Cambridge, Dublin. We're all engaged in this really fundamental work, and I've committed to that. I'm chair of the London Buddhist Centre. I've committed to doing what I can to inspire, to guide us in this project, and all of us here, Maitreyabandhu, Hipuli, all of us, on the team for this retreat at the London Buddhist Centre, all those practicing and volunteering at the London Buddhist Centre and all the other centres, we're engaged on some level with this project. Because really, what else is there to do? I think what else is there to do than to grow and to discover what this life is, and to help other people discover this life, what this life can be. And part of that is around alleviating the suffering, alleviating those barriers that we discover in ourselves and in others and in the world. So in a way, you've committed to that by showing up on this retreat, by showing up this evening, by listening to the recording. If you're listening to this, you're committed to that on some level too. I think we all deeply, it's like a plant. I always think of ourselves as a plant who deeply want to grow, and we want to grow towards the light. And we need the conditions to do that. We need other people to do that. We need support to do that. And that's what we're doing on this retreat. We're supporting each other to grow, to reach our potential, to let go of the barriers. So yes, it's great. It's great being part of this, having this vision. There's nothing else I'd want to be doing with my life. Really what we're doing is just encouraging and supporting other people to grow in whatever level you want to grow. That's what we're here for. And you can help us do this. You can help us join in that vision. And the first thing is commitment. You've already been committing by, turning up, as I said, and meditating and practicing. And you can also express that commitment by giving to us financially. That will enable us to continue this vision, continue to reach out to more and more people. I think when we give from that positive mindset, the person that gives is the first beneficiary. If you give, you're the first person that benefits. And I know for me, when I give to something I value, that in a way I receive the benefits straight off, because I invest more, I turn up more for it. I put my hand in my pocket and I say, yeah, actually this matters to me. So yes, in a way, giving means you're giving to yourself, you're committing even further to your growth. And you also help us at a really crucial time. So I want to thank all of you who've already given. We started this on Sunday. Many of you have already given. We've asked for £100. If you can do that, that's fantastic. And many of you have given £100. Some of you have given more than £100. That's fantastic. But whatever you can give really makes a difference. Right now, we're losing about £20,000 a month at London Buddhist Centre because we're not able to run in-person retreats. And so your giving makes a difference. It helps fill that gap. It helps us continue what we're doing, continue to share this powerful, inspirational vision in the world. So we're asking you, inviting you to give £100 more if you can, and if you can't, whatever you can really makes a difference. So really inviting you to do that. And if you're from one of the other centres, Brixton, Sheffield, Dublin, Cambridge, there's a link as well that you can give specifically to your centre, because we're all involved in this same project. So yes, please do give. It makes a difference to us. It encourages us to keep going, and it makes it possible, in fact, to keep going. To be honest, I would keep going anyway if I can, but actually being able to join with so many other people, zooming in from home, running these online retreats with more than 1,000 of you is just a fantastic opportunity. So you'll help us keep doing this, keep reaching out. So yes, thank you for that, for giving in advance of your giving, and thank you if you've already given. And so now what we're going to do a ritual, and a ritual is also another way we can show up, another way we can commit further, because whilst we have these inspirations, while we have these aspirations, and you've formed your intention for being here, for being on this retreat, we also have those things that hold us back, our doubts, our anxieties, our low self-worth. All these things can hold us back. And when we do a ritual, we're actually speaking to those parts as well, speaking to the parts of us who needs poetry, needs myth, needs imagination, needs emotion to get ourselves going. So we're going to do a very short ritual. It's in 3 stages. I'll recite some words, and and please join in. Maitreyabandhu and Hippolyte will respond, call and response. They'll respond, but please join in the response to this puja, threefold puja. And at the end, we'll zoom back to the London Buddhist Centre shrine room, that beautiful shrine, and Maitreyabandhu will lead us in a chant. We'll join in that chanting, and then we'll end with candles being extinguished in the shrine room, and that will signal the end of our meeting, our evening together. So that's the rest of our evening, and we'll do that very shortly now. And I'll start us off in a short reading from Milarepa to get us going. So get yourselves ready. And it's a reading from Milarepa. I'm a yogi who wanders the countryside, a beggar who travels alone, a pauper who's got nothing. I left behind the land of my birth, turned my back on my own fine house, and gave up my fertile fields. I stayed in isolated mountain retreats, practiced in rock caves surrounded by snow, and found foods as birds do. That's how it's been up till now. There's no telling the day of my death, but I have a purpose before I die. That's the story of me, the yogi. Now I'll give you some advice. Trying to control the events of this life, trying to be so clever, always planning to manipulate your world, involved in repetitive social relations. In the midst of these preparations for the future, you arrive unaware at your final years. Not realizing your brow is knit with wrinkles, not knowing your hair is turned white, not seeing the skin of your eyes sink down, not admitting the sag of your mouth and nose. Even while chased by the envoys of death, you still sing and rejoice in pleasure. Not knowing if life will last till morning, you still make plans for tomorrow's future. Not knowing where rebirth will occur, you still maintain a complacent contentment. Now's the time to get ready for death. That's my sincere advice to you. If its import strikes you, start your practice. The threefold puja. Open in reverence. We reverence the Buddha.
We reverence the Buddha,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the shower of the way,
the shower of the way.
We reverence the Dharma.
We reverence the Dharma,
the teaching of the Buddha,
the teaching of the Buddha,
which leads from darkness to light,
which leads from darkness to light.
We reverence the Sangha.
We reverence the Sangha,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
that inspires and guides,
that inspires and guides.
Reverence to the three jewels. We reverence the Buddha.
We reverence the Buddha,
and aspire to follow him.
And aspire to follow him.
The Buddha was born as we are born.
The Buddha was born as we are born.
What the Buddha overcame, we too can overcome.
What the Buddha overcame, we too can overcome.
What the Buddha attained, we too can attain.
What the Buddha attained, we too can attain.
We reverence the Dharma and aspire to follow it.
We reverence the Dharma and aspire to follow it.
With body, speech, and mind until the end.
With body, speech, and mind until the end.
The truth in all its aspects.
The truth in all its aspects.
The path in all its stages.
The path in all its stages.
We aspire to study, practice, realize.
We aspire to study, practice, realize.
We reverence the Sangha and aspire to follow it.
We reverence the Sangha and aspire to follow it.
The fellowship of those who tread the way.
The fellowship of those who tread the way.
As one by one we make our own commitment.
As one by one we make our own commitment.
An ever widening circle the Sangha grows.
An ever widening circle the Sangha grows.
Offerings to the Buddha. Reverencing the Buddha, we offer flowers.
Reverencing the Buddha, we offer flowers.
Flowers that today are fresh and sweetly blooming.
Flowers that today are fresh and sweetly blooming.
Flowers that tomorrow are faded and fallen.
Flowers that tomorrow are faded and fallen.
Our bodies too, like flowers, will pass away.
Our bodies too, like flowers, will pass away.
Reverencing the Buddha, we offer candles.
Reverencing the Buddha, we offer candles.
To him who is the light, we offer light.
To him who is the light, we offer light.
From his greater lamp, a lesser lamp we light within us.
From his greater lamp, a lesser lamp we light within us.
The lamp of Bodhi shining within our hearts.
The lamp of Bodhi shining within our hearts.
Reverencing the Buddha, we offer incense.
Reverencing the Buddha, we offer incense.
Incense whose fragrance pervades the air.
Incense whose fragrance pervades the air.
The fragrance of the perfect life, sweeter than incense.
The fragrance of the perfect life, sweeter than incense.
Spreads in all directions throughout the world.
Spreads in all directions throughout the world. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. 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 Shakyamuni Swam. Om Muni Muni Mani Shakyamuni Swam. So you please going to extinguish the lights in the shrine room, and that will conclude our evening, and we'll see you at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 8 o'clock. Hope you all sleep well. See you again soon.